Hi, and welcome to the Revive, Thrive, and Optimize podcast. I'm Billy Weiss, compounding pharmacist and health and wellness expert. Glad you're here with us today. As always, producer Mike's behind the scenes and special guest Don Miller. Good morning, Don.
Hey, Billy.
How are you today?
I'm great.
Good.
Good morning, Mike.
Nice early morning, right?
Yeah.
All right.
Good morning.
Yeah. So we're going to talk a little bit about your experiences with peptides, but I think it's important for us to first start with why you got into the peptide scene. Tell us about some of the injuries and things you've had over the years and what brought you to start using peptides.
Well, I have been an avid weightlifter on and off since I was 15, and I've had some injuries due to that. I've had rotator cuff repair and a revision, and before that I had a so I've had 3 left shoulder surgeries.
Wow.
I've got a torn rotator cuff and a torn biceps in this shoulder. I was told 10 years ago I needed it. At some point I'd have to have a knee replacement. And I've herniated a disc powerlifting, L5S1, and I had bad radiculopathy for a year. And then the thing that really topped it off, I got in a pretty bad car accident. I was actually pronounced dead. And I fractured, compression fracture at T4, and all of the spinous processes of my thoracic spine and the right transverse process of my lumbar spine. I fractured all of those. In addition to that, I had, different levels. I have herniated discs. So I got a lot going on.
Yeah.
And I know how to manage these things because my background is a strength and conditioning specialist as well as a board certified orthopedic clinical specialist in physical therapy. I understand,
Right.
I understand these things. And I know that if I don't take care of myself and do everything I can, that I'm going to have problems as I age. And fortunately for me, I'm married to a woman who is into movement and nutrition and peptides, and your co-host a lot of times. Yeah. And she's constantly reading about health and wellness and peptides. And of course, I'm interested in those things too, just because of my background. So years ago, I guess 9 years ago, we started with epimorelin. A friend of Janet's in Asheville is a physician who knew about these things. So we started our process of learning about it way back then. And then we really got dialed in when we met you because we learned more about nutrition, which we thought we knew about, but we didn't.
Right.
and supplements and your pillars. And of course, the exercise part, we had a pretty good handle on. And the water, we have the king. All of the things that you suggested we've done to try to dial our health and wellness in. And then we started talking with you about peptides. And BPC 157 with TB 500 was really popular because a well-known quarterback in the NFL was doing it. And you mentioned it. And I read about it and researched it and started using it. And I was able to, well, first thing, when I get up in the morning, I have to go downstairs and get in the sauna, and then I have to stretch just to feel good because I hurt. And I wasn't sleeping well. We talked about that. You helped me with that. But the TB, I realized that this combination, the BPC 157 and the TB 500, started taking it, and I wasn't hurting as much, and I noticed I was sleeping better. Like, because that was a big thing for me. You know how hard I had to struggle with that. So for me, the 157 and the TB 500 has been a real game changer. I'm able to work out more. All the research shows that maintaining muscle as you age is so important. Well, I used to be a power lifter. I wasn't very good, but I enjoyed it.
Right.
And I liked lifting heavy things,
Right.
And I had a lot of muscle mass. At one point, I think when I started with you and after our first round of your boot camp, I was actually 7% body fat at 212.
Yeah.
Well, that was a good, I don't know how many years ago that was.
It's 10 years ago at least, isn't it?
Well, I'm fighting now to keep my muscle on. So I think my body fat went up a little bit. I'm under 10%, but I'm at 200 pounds and my muscle has diminished somewhat. So I'm fighting that sarcopenia we all experience as we age, and I want to be able to train. And I like to work out, but I have an ego like most of us. If we go to the gym and I lift heavy weights, sometimes I maybe do a little more than I should. So I've had to learn to kind of check my ego and train around my injuries and use your pillars in addition to, some of the things you've taught us and we've learned about, and Janet's taught me about peptides and BPC 157 with the TB 500. For me, has been a game changer. I'm able to work out. I actually did hill sprints yesterday. Well, maybe they weren't sprints, more tempo work.
Right.
And I'm able to do more. I've lost some fat around my abdomen. My visceral fat was a 3 at one point on the
in body.
And I've been able to maintain and gain some muscle mass and lift a little heavier without aggravating my injuries.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And, one of the things that I always had to work around with my patients is I'd have to train them and work on their strength and their mobility, but work around an injury. And that always is a little more complicated for people as we age, trying to stay in shape.
Sure.
So one of the things that I've been doing with Janet is helping people do that. And BPC 157 and TB 500, some of them are using it. They've read about it and heard about it from you and from other people, and they're experiencing healing from injuries quicker, and they're able to train.
Yeah.
So I think it's wonderful.
Yeah. Well, it seems to have all those properties that you talked about.
Yeah.
It's the healing, the anti-inflammatory effects, so people don't feel as much pain. But for you, the right shoulder, right, was one of the things. I remember when we were talking, like you just couldn't get comfortable at night because, like, no matter how you laid, you were on some type of injury, right? And it just kind of bothered you.
Yeah.
I mean, really, when you think about your story, a lot of people may not. Well, you could have died. Obviously, you said you were pronounced dead, but with all the spinal injuries and things, the fact that you're able to function normally is pretty amazing. So now if you can find something that gives you an edge and you can get back to working out the way you like, that's pretty cool.
Well, I don't know that I'll be able to work out the way I like.
Okay. But you can still lift weights and do some of the sprints and things that you used to do.
Sprints is generous. Yeah. But I can train and maintain my level of fitness. My goal, your goals change as you get older.
Yeah.
When you're younger, you want to be strong and big and fast. And I still want to be those things, but I'm also realistic.
Right.
And with these injuries, I want to maintain my health and be able to pick up my grandkids and walk up and down the stairs without pain. And if I can look good too, that'd be great. And I really, I do enjoy exercise. And for me, if I couldn't exercise, I would be depressed.
Yes.
I think you are.
Absolutely. No doubt. That's one of the things that I look forward to every day.
Yeah. So for me, your program and the yoga and the Pilates that I'm doing with my wife, and my changed routine and exercise, in combination with the BPC 157 the TB 500, has enabled me to continue to maintain my fitness as best I can without aggravating my injuries.
Yeah, and I think that's what we want to hope for and work for, right?
Right.
At this point. And so we talk quite often, and one of the things you told me, I don't know how long ago it's been, but since you've been doing this BPC and TB 500 regular in the OptiU program, you're back to doing some exercises you weren't able to do, right? Like you were telling me you were doing push-ups, pull-ups, some things that you hadn't been able to do with your shoulders in the past.
Yeah, I even did front squats at the Y the other day. I did 2 1/4 for a few sets, and I haven't done that in a number of years.
Okay.
And I mean, that's not real heavy, but at least I can do it.
Right.
My knees aren't hurting as much. And,
right.
You just have to be careful because it's so effective sometimes. I find that I push myself a little bit more than I should, so I have to back off.
Yeah.
Take the ego out of it.
Well, see, the beauty, though, with your background is you understand how to do that. It's just convincing yourself to do it, right?
Well, like you said, understanding and actually doing it are two different things.
Yeah.
But over time, your body and aging, if you pay attention, has a way of teaching you that.
Right.
And I'm a slow learner, but I'm catching on finally. I'm 60. I'll be 62, so it's taking a long time.
And I got to tell you, Don, I mean, you look unbelievable. Like you're not average for the average 40-year-old, much less the 60-year-old. So,
well, that's kind of you to say. I'll take it. I don't believe it, but I'll take it.
Absolutely true. I mean, most people, as you know, in America are they're fat, they're overweight, right? They're
Yeah.
not healthy, and you not only are healthy, you look healthy.
Well, you played a big part in that. I mean, I've always exercised. I love exercise just
Right.
like you. In fact, probably have been addicted
Yeah,
to it at times. And it's something I struggle with because I really do want to exercise. And if I don't, I don't feel right.
right,
And I know some of that is maybe comes from an unhealthy place.
right.
And, but you've helped me balance that out with your pillars,
Mhm.
and the supplements. It's frustrating because we have friends that we love and we're trying to help, and they'll ask us questions. And sometimes it's just so much information out there. And if you don't learn how to navigate
Mhm.
the system, and when I say the system, you're talking about the food, your food
Yep.
choices,
Yep.
your supplementation, going to the grocery store after, the lights came on and I learned all this stuff. Hell, there's very little stuff that you can buy that's
True.
and if you try to tell a friend about it, they look at you like you've lost your mind,
Yep.
and so we've learned that we give the people a little bit at a time.
That's right.
And if you can introduce something like BPC 157 and TB 500 after somebody gets on that plan,
Yep.
and they can continue to stay healthy and exercise, and that helps them, it's a game changer.
Yeah.
It has
No.
been for me.
It has been for a lot of people over the years. Do you find it ironic, or what do you think when the FDA says, hey, these things are no longer, they're category 2, we don't have enough research, we don't know if they're safe for humans?
Well, unfortunately, we're finding out a lot about corruption.
Yeah.
In all spaces, it seems like.
Yeah.
The Food and Drug Administration, you look at the food industry, you're looking at the big pharma.
Yeah.
I mean, all of it.
I think you can add the Diabetes Association, the
Oh,
Heart Association,
all of
the
it.
cancer societies. You can add them all in there.
It's crazy. It's almost like when they recommend something, if you do the opposite, you're pretty much. And it's also frustrating for our friends. And this is something that really makes it difficult when you give them some advice and they go and talk to their physician,
Mm-hmm.
and their doctors are still not up to date on some of this
Mhm.
stuff.
Yeah.
Something as simple as a lipid panel.
Yes.
I mean, you remember my story with that.
Oh, absolutely.
I had to go in and explain, what tests that you recommended,
Right.
and why. And
Right.
it was a real struggle.
Yeah.
And I was healthy. You looked at my blood work and you said, hey, this is perfect, man.
Yeah.
And they wanted to put me on a statin.
I remember.
Well,
Don, as I've taught for literally 35 years now, our system is broken, right? Which is the first class in my boot camp, the weekend, is that we have a broken system. But as I have helped some family members recently who have been, unfortunately, in the system, had to be in the system, my mom being one of them, it's really worse than you think, than you teach when you get into the middle of it.
Oh,
And
my
you get in there and you realize they don't really know. So, for example, I noticed on my mom's med list, they had a particular drug that's used as a blood thinner.
yeah.
And so I asked the question, why is she on this? And they said, well, she has some inflammation in her colon. And I said, okay, why is she on this drug? They said, well, it's for the inflammation in her colon. I said, huh. I said, that's funny, because I'm a pharmacist and I learned that this drug was a blood thinner. And so I called them. They don't have a clue what they're giving to patients. The registered nurse had no clue. And I'm like, it's kind of dangerous when you can't tell a family member. I knew the difference,
Right.
but she's already prone to falling, right?
Yeah.
And so now you got her on a blood thinner, and you're not even able to communicate to the family that it is a blood thinner. Think about the harm that can come from that.
Well, unfortunately, the third leading cause of death in the United States is a fancy word they like to use called iatrogenic.
Yep.
And what that means is they caused the
The
problem.
doctor induced. Yeah.
Yeah. And there are a lot of great doctors out there.
Sure.
So I don't want to bang on all of them.
No.
The system is such that they're incentivized to do things that may not be in our best interest.
Right.
And it's unfortunate. And I remember 10 years ago at your first seminar at my clinic, because we hosted it.
That's correct.
That you started talking about this stuff. And I don't know if you remember, but I got really pissed.
Yeah, I do.
I couldn't believe it. And the fact is, Billy, since then, I've looked at all these other things. I'm listening to, podcasts, Peter Attia, a physician, Huberman, a PhD at Stanford.
Yep.
Listening to all these guys talk about this stuff, and they know it.
Yeah.
So why isn't it incorporated into the system?
Yeah.
It's broken, like you said. Even my industry, physical therapy.
Yeah.
I mean, you're pushed to see volume and fill the schedule and be efficient, and you can't spend the time you need to spend with your patients. No. It's broken.
Well, it's all about filling every slot to bill the insurance.
Yeah.
So I had a friend who had a heart issue, and he was in with the biggest clinic around here, the biggest heart clinic around here. And he actually gained 7 pounds of fluid overnight, one night.
Whoa.
He called the heart doctor. And he called the office and said, "Hey, I gained 7 pounds of fluid. I wanted to see if I could get in and be seen." They told him they could make him an appointment in 4 months.
Oh, my
And
goodness.
he was like, all the PAs, nurse practitioners, physicians, you don't have and they have offices all over. He said, "You don't have anything anywhere I'll drive." She said, "Every single appointment's filled for 4 months." And that's because of the insurance system.
That's unbelievable.
That they don't have any. I was told by some older doctors that they used to keep 6 appointments every day open for people who had needs, right? Who just had emergency. We'll call it not an emergency that you need an emergency room, but an emergency that you probably need to be seen fairly quickly, an urgent kind of thing. And so they don't do that anymore. And so that leads me back to why I'm afraid that there could be some reasons other than patient safety that BPC 157 and TB 500 and a whole list of these peptides are no longer available necessarily through the doctor's prescription and through the compounding pharmacy.
Well, if that happens, it'll be because they want to make the money from it.
Right.
That's the only reason it'll happen.
Yeah.
And that's unfortunate.
It is.
The thing where you were talking about the doctors too, another thing that's changed is I remember back in the day, you could go and see your GP and he knew you.
Yes.
And then if you were admitted to the hospital, he would follow you to the hospital.
Correct.
Now you have doctors that all they do
is the hospital.
Yeah, they're called hospitalists.
Yeah.
And they don't know you.
No.
So are the chances of mistakes being made greater or less with that? I don't know. Yeah. I don't know what
I think it's more, Don, and I'll tell you what's even scarier. Sometimes they don't even come in and examine you. They're on a TV screen in front of you. Mm. Now you think about that when these older doctors were taught 80% of the diagnosis was examining and listening to the patient. How are you going to do that from a TV screen sitting in a room maybe 100 miles, 200 miles
or
away?
If you only have 5-10 minutes.
That's true, because the insurance has got you going to the next room, right?
I tell you, I think I told you this. I went in and I had questions like I ask you all the time.
Yeah.
I sat down and I had some questions from my physician, and it was about health and wellness and what I could do to improve.
Right.
I don't have time for that.
Yeah.
So basically it's sick care.
Yes.
And I don't need sick care.
Right.
So you recommended somebody, and Janet and I, we have insurance, but we're paying for a lot of stuff out of pocket just because for some reason our insurance won't cover it.
No, and honestly, Don, those type of providers are not going to take your insurance because they're going to dictate what they can do for you, how long they can spend with you.
Yeah.
It's really sad that we have to go, I'll call it outside the system, in order to get what I would call the top care.
Well, you see the same thing in my industry. I have a lot of guys that I brought in and helped train, and they're frustrated, and they're going out and they're seeing less patients.
Yeah.
And they're taking cash, and people will pay it.
Yes.
They can bill their own insurance later, but in order to get the care that they need, they need to go outside the system because it's you can't do it in the time allotted a lot of times.
No, and the problem is that the system is designed, unfortunately, so that if the physician office doesn't operate that way, they probably can't survive.
Exactly.
And so it makes it almost impossible for them to answer your questions, because if they don't see that next patient and get that next Blue Cross Blue Shield payment or Aetna payment or Humana payment, if they work for the hospital system, which 99% of them do today, they'll get fired.
Well,
they have a quota.
Private practices are no longer
very few and far between.
Yeah,
yeah.
And I think your industry you're talking about, I think you see it in your industry more than most, right? You guys are really squeezed.
Oh yeah, the insurance companies control so much of what we do, which is why we at Prescriptions Plus offer both ends, right?
Yeah.
We do the traditional. You can come in and get your insurance prescription filled on your insurance, or you can do a cash compound or a cash consult or cash supplement.
Right.
So we try to, I call it a hybrid, right? We're offering both sides of it.
It's funny that you say that because I'm helping a couple of young guys right now get started in their practice, and they want to do the cash base.
Yeah.
Because they get to do more quality
it can
work.
really help the patient.
Yeah, they want to do that, but they realize they probably have to do a hybrid. I've talked to them about it because in Cleveland County, the demographics are such that it would make it tough to do.
Yeah.
So a hybrid, I think, is a good model, and it offers something for people like us that have insurance but may want to step outside that model.
Right.
To get health care.
Right. Well, I remember this was years ago, but when my mom had an orthopedic injury, she was seeing the clinic here, and they wanted her to have physical therapy. And Beth was like, okay, set them up with Don Miller's clinic. Set her up there. And they kept going, we have our own physical therapy clinic. She's like, we don't care. We're not going to your own physical therapy clinic. We want to go see Don Miller, but sometimes you have to pay for that, right? You have to pay to go outside of the box. So it's just the system we're in is broken, and it just leads us back to this category 2 list of peptides. Is it really for patient safety, or is it to protect the drug companies? I don't know.
Well, I think you do know.
I do know, but probably shouldn't say.
Yeah, and you talk about coming out of your pocket. I'm kind of very conscious of my finances.
Sure. You have to be, right?
Some might say I'm tight. I don't know. But when I looked at this originally, I was like, man, this is expensive.
Yeah.
And it's a little, but when you look at the long-term benefits and the health benefits, you can either pay now or you pay later.
Yeah.
And it's well worth it, in my opinion. My mom always used to feed us really well because she would say, if you eat right, we'll we'll pay in food instead of doctor bills.
Right.
And I think the same thing is true with the pillars and the peptides too.
Yeah. I agree. I think that we need to invest in our health in order to not have to pay to be in a broken system, or to minimize our need for the broken system, which is why I love it when people like you and Janet come who don't have one of the chronic diseases that everybody's suffering from, and you come year after year so that hopefully you don't have the chronic diseases, but you're coming to prevent those things.
Well, I'm managing my chronic orthopedic issues.
Yeah, but you don't have a chronic lifestyle disease.
No. Thanks to you and my wife, and being disciplined enough to kind of implement some things.
Do you know how unusual it is for somebody above even 40 or 50 today? You're 60.
I'll be 62.
Yeah, so that's not on any prescription drugs. Do you know how unusual?
You know what?
Like, that's an anomaly in today's world.
Well, when I used to do my intake and do my examination of the patients, one of the things I would do is it got so bad, I would have to have them come with a list.
Yes.
Because I would spend 20 minutes trying to write these things down.
They don't know how to spell them, right? They don't know what they are.
So I'd have to get it later. But I'm familiar with that. And I think a lot of it, you always talk about the effects of the side effects. There aren't side effects, they're effects.
Yeah.
And you always talk about the combination and how that is exponential if you're taking multiple medications.
Yeah.
So I always encourage people to be really careful.
Absolutely.
About any kind of prescriptions that they have to take.
Absolutely. They need to really question their provider, make sure it's something they need, and make sure that it's not something that a simple lifestyle change or a simple supplement recommendation would correct.
That's right. And you see these, it makes me mad when I see these people, they're doing Ozempic because they want to lose weight. Come on. Yeah. Have a little discipline.
Yeah.
If you got a real problem, I understand you need to take it.
Absolutely.
And I understand that the microdosing is a lot more beneficial for people than taking the big doses that they were recommending. But people like Janet and you always talk about, people need to get the pillars dialed in first before they start looking outside at all that stuff.
Absolutely. Well, Don, thank you, man. I'm so glad that the BPC and TB 500s made a difference, and you're able to sleep better. You're able to get back out and do some of your exercising.
Yeah, me too.
So that's awesome.
And it's kind of cool getting to see a couple of my buddies who are doing it.
Yeah.
Being able to do the same thing. So thank you.
Well, thank you for encouraging people. Hopefully people who listen to this, who maybe have similar chronic injuries that are painful,
Yeah.
can listen to your story and say, okay, maybe there are things that I can do. I can follow the 5 pillars of the Opti program. I can balance my hormones. I can look at peptides.
Yeah.
right?
Well, as someone who's seen, been in the business for 35 years and treated patients and, owned facilities, I've seen a lot of things. And one of the things that I think that's been missing is dialing this type of thing. If you have chronic pain, you need to address all of these things because it makes a world of difference.
Absolutely.
And I thank you for all the help that you've given Janet and I over the years.
Yeah. No, thank you. Thank you for hosting and doing everything.
Well, it's good stuff.
All right. Thanks, man.
Thank
See
you.
ya.
See you.
Bye.